So tonight is all about arthritis. As you can imagine, as a chiropractor, this is something I encounter a lot and something I talk to people about a lot. And often people don't necessarily understand arthritis all that well. They often don't have it explained to them very well. And what I experience a lot is that people think that there's not much they can do about it. All right. So this idea that all of the arthritic problems come from either old age, right, or genetics. So people say, well, I'm getting old. That's to be expected. Not much I can do about that. I can't make myself any younger, right? Or that it's all to do with genetics. And so it's like, well, my mum, my dad, my family, arthritis runs in my family, and so therefore I'm going to get it, and there's not much I can do about it, right? Or that it's just bad luck, that I just got the arthritis, and so there was no sort of influence I could have on that. And the first thing I'd like to say about that is that it can be all three of those, right? So there is certainly a component of aging in arthritis, and we'll talk about that shortly. There is certainly a component of genetics in arthritis, and we'll talk about that too. And there is a component of luck in arthritis, right? Like, we don't know everything that we can do to prevent arthritis, and we don't know what in our lives and what we will do that may be unavoidable, that may lead us to arthritis later on, right? So, just as an example, I fell heavily on my knee playing indoor cricket a couple of weeks ago, right? And so today I was sort of researching through that, examining the possibility that I think I might have slightly injured my posterior cruciate ligament. And as I was looking into that and sort of doing a bit of extra research on that, I became aware that that is a likely precursor to more arthritis in that knee later on in life, right? So that was a little bit of, well, we could say luck, we could say lack of coordination, or whatever you might like to choose there. But the reality is, like I said, that there is a component of age in arthritis. There is a component of genetics in arthritis. There is a component of luck in arthritis. But that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it. In fact, there's a lot of things we can do about it that can help tilt the odds in our favor, right? And when it comes to arthritis, the most common one that I hear is age, right? And I'm constantly speaking to people who say, I'm getting older, I've got arthritis, it's to be expected, there's nothing I can do about it, there's nothing I could have done to prevent it, right? And often we will, in my practice, be looking at x-rays of these people. We might pull up some x-rays, and what we'll often see is that there are some joints that are really worn out, right? There are other joints that are less worn out, right? And commonly what I always ask people is, I say, look at these two joints here, right? They're both in your body. They're both, how old is this joint? How old is that joint, right? And they'll kind of smirk and look at me and be like, well, obviously they're both the same age. And I say, well, okay, well, if it was just age that caused this problem, does that make sense? Or is it the case that one of these is wearing out quicker than it could be, quicker than may be appropriate for your age, as a result of some other factors, right? And so that's then when we can start having a conversation about what else we might be able to do to help prevent, to help slow, and to help manage that arthritis, right? Similarly with genetics, right? Like, there is a lot of research, and I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff tonight that has been shown to be influential when it comes to arthritis. And so if arthritis was just 100% genetic, then there's nothing we could do to influence it, right? If you have the gene, you're going to get it, it's going to express it, and you're going to get arthritis, right? But the reality is, regardless of whether you've got the gene or not, right, there's no one gene that shows you're going to get arthritis in one joint. There's not even a gene that shows if you have that gene, you will 100% get arthritis. At least none that we're aware of, and I think unlikely to be one in the future too, right? So what that means is that there is stuff that we can do, whether that be mindsets, whether that be movements, whether that be dietary and food, that are going to have an influence on whether we end up getting arthritis, and to the degree to which we end up getting arthritis, probably more accurately, because at the end of the day, as I said, whilst age isn't the only determining factor in arthritis, it is a determining factor. I mean, flat out, there is such a thing as normal aging, and it is normal for your joints to age as you get older. And so there is a natural slow progression of arthritis and degeneration as you age, right? But often what we talk about and what people are told is normal aging is often actually quite accelerated aging and quite accelerated wear and tear. And often there are aspects of what we're going to talk about tonight that they're doing wrong that may well be contributing to that as well. Okay, so that's, I guess, the age factor. That's the genetic factor. As I said, the luck factor does come into it, and there's sometimes not much you can do about that in terms of acute accidents and injuries. maybe surgeries, maybe lifestyle, jobs, all that sort of stuff that can influence whether you get arthritis. However, in all of those occasions, there are still things you can do to influence the outcome, right? To help to slow the rate of progression of that arthritis, to help to mitigate the pain you experience and the loss of function you experience from that arthritis. And so really a lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight are still going to be relevant, okay? And it's important to remember, a bit like we spoke about headaches last month, that arthritis isn't arthritis. There are many, many different forms of arthritis. I'll talk about a couple of them in a second, but really if I was to sit here and go over all of them, well, then we could possibly be here all night, because arthritis is quite a generic description, right? It's an inflammation of one or more joints causing pain and stiffness that may worsen with age, right? And that can describe a huge array of things, right? Obviously, one of the most common and one that we talk about a lot is what's called osteoarthritis, or sometimes they'll call that wear and tear arthritis. Once again, we need to assess that wear and tear and say, is that normal wear and tear? Because there is such a thing as normal wear and tear, but it's quite a slow process, as I mentioned before. And there's also such thing as accelerated wear and tear, where you may be doing one or more of the following things we're going to talk about incorrectly, and that may be causing that to wear out quicker than it otherwise would. Okay, so that's osteoarthritis. There is rheumatoid arthritis, right, which is an autoimmune disorder targeting the joints. There's psoriatic arthritis, right? So if you suffer from psoriasis, there is a possibility that that may also attack your joints. And the mechanisms of that are still really not well known or well understood. But we do understand that it is related to immune dysfunction. It can be related to infection. It can be more likely in cases of obesity and trauma. So once again, we're looking at that immune system and that inflammatory system with our body, right? Lupus is another one that is an autoimmune disorder. Gout, which is caused by an increase in uric acid in your body. There's a number of ways that can happen, but particularly excessive consumption of sugar, excessive consumption of alcohol. Some people have linked it to excessive consumption of meat. However, I think probably the quality of the meat, whether it is high in omega-3s or high in omega-6s, whether it's grain-fed meat or grass-fed meat, can play a role in that. So I don't think we should just necessarily demonize meat in that instance. However, that's something that I think needs to still be studied and investigated further. And there are many, many more types of arthritis. Okay, so there's lots of different types of arthritis. However, the common thread that seems to run through all of them is that they tend to be related to the inflammatory response in the body, and they tend to be related to the immune response in the body. Obviously, those two are very closely linked together anyway. And so most of the things we can do to help, as I said, to slow and to relieve arthritis are related to lifestyle factors that are going to influence that inflammatory response within your body, okay? And so that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So once again, I've got a lot of these to get through. I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you about, and so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. As you're listening in, please make sure you're asking questions. If you're coming across this video on my page or perhaps in my YouTube channel, then if you're watching this later, if you're not watching this live and you have questions you want to ask, the best place to go and to ask those questions is in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group. Okay, and that's a free group where I provide videos like this every month. I mentor people within that group. You can ask of me whatever questions you want. I share my podcast in there. I share other articles I've written in there. I share interesting bits of health and wellness content in there. And so if that's something you're interested in, or as I said, if you want to ask questions on these videos, then the link to that is in the description of this Facebook Live, and you can click on that link. You can join that group. I'll answer the questions. I'll let you in, and you can join us there and ask any questions you want. So by all means, do that. But the number one tip in terms of arthritis I've got here is really about maintaining a healthy weight. This is not necessarily number one because this is the most important. In fact, it's probably not one of the most important, but it's just in the order that I've put these together as I was coming up with them. And the reason I say maintaining a healthy weight is not the most important is because I see a lot of people who kind of get badgered about their weight and their weight blamed as being seemingly almost solely responsible for their arthritis by people around them and even by healthcare professionals as well. And typically my answer to them is to say, well, if it was just your weight, once again, that caused this problem, wouldn't it make sense that everybody who is the same weight as you would have the same problem, the same arthritis, the same degeneration in the same area, right? And the reality is that that's not the case. That there are many people who are at various weights who are not suffering to the same degree. And so then what we need to start looking at is, okay, maybe some of the other factors that we're going to talk about, but also function, rather than just going straight to the weight as the easy, simple solution and saying, well, you're overweight, so too bad. Is saying, well, okay, but what if we did everything else right? What if those joints were really well aligned? What if they were functioning really well? What if you were able to control your stabilizers really well? Might that make a difference? Might that mean that in spite of your weight, you function better, we get the pressure off of those joints, and they might behave in a more appropriate way? If we can reduce the systemic inflammatory response in your body, in spite of your weight, might that not be a way that we can help reduce the impact of that? And might that explain why different people at the same weight can have different arthritic experiences? All right, so I do think weight is important. Excessive weight on the joint is going to cause increased load there. It is going to cause a greater propensity towards arthritis than there may otherwise be, but it's not the be-all and end-all that some make it out to be. And in fact, what I would suggest is that if you focused less on your weight and more on some of the other actions that I'm going to talk about going through here, it's likely that your weight is going to improve anyway. And that would be a really beneficial way to do it, that by working on things to help you with your arthritis, you may in fact just naturally lose weight along the way as well. Okay, so the next point, number 2, I've got here, I've got 23 different points we're going to rattle through here, so just bear with me as I race through them. And as I said, make sure that you ask any questions as we go along, and understand that you may already be doing some of these in a great way, and that's okay, so you can just kind of skip past those, right? You may find that some of these are inaccessible to you, and you feel they're not going to work for you, and that's okay, you can skip past those too, Not all of them are going to work for everybody either, okay? So you may say that, well, I've tried that and that didn't make a difference, and that's okay, because as I said, there are 23 different things here, and so I'm sure you can find something there that you can do that may make a difference, and you can just keep trying. If it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean that you probably haven't done yourself any disservice. You've probably done yourself a favor anyway, even if it doesn't help you with your arthritis. But also it just allows you to then move on and try something else. Don't get too disheartened by it, okay? Because there's lots of different approaches, and as I said, different things will work for different people. And you may even find that you can come back to that same intervention later on, couple it with one of the other things that did work for you, and it might work better then, right? So you might find that, for example, my next tip is going to be about exercise, and you might initially find that exercise makes things worse, but then later on you've changed your diet, you've decreased the inflammation in your body, you've de-stressed a little bit, decreased the inflammation in your body, and you may come back to doing that exact same exercise and find that it's actually more beneficial, okay? So once again, don't feel like any of these are the be-all and end-all. They're just a whole lot of options that you can try that may well help you with your arthritis, all right? And so once again, exercise is really beneficial, okay? Getting your joints moving is really important for the health of your joints. I often think of your joints like a bit like a rusty gate, right? The more you keep them moving, then the healthier they're going to be, the less they're going to start to rust and corrode, right? So get your joints moving. Obviously, if you are suffering from arthritis, you might want to consider doing that in a low impact way so that you're not putting additional stress onto those joints, or at least excessive stress onto those joints, right? Because actually a little bit of stress is really beneficial for your joints, okay? As always, with lots of things in health, there's a bit of a bell curve there, right? Where if you don't put enough stress on your joints, that can be harmful for them. If you put too much stress on your joints, that can be harmful for them. But just the right amount of stress can be really beneficial, okay? So you want to keep your joints moving as much as possible. Once again, if you're really struggling with arthritis, then you may want to be doing that in a low impact way. And so that might be something like, I was talking to one of my practice members recently. We were talking about how to do this and realized that for her and for her knees that were particularly problematic, then sitting, in one of those seated bikes and pedaling was a really good way for her to do it. Isn't putting a huge load on those knees, but is allowing them to move really fluently without the weight-bearing aspect, and has actually made a really big difference and has really helped her improve her knees, right? So things like aqua aerobics where you're taking the weight off. There's lots of different options that you can do in a lower impact environment if that's what you need to do. If you can have more impact, not necessarily saying we're trying to get as much impact as possible, but if you can allow for some impact and some stressing of those joints, then by all means keep doing that as well, because that does have its own benefits in terms of a preventative approach to keeping your joints healthy and keeping your bones healthy, because the bones particularly respond really well to resistance exercise. Stretching obviously can be something. So, for some people, their musculoskeletal system might be too tight and might be causing additional stress on their joints in a number of different areas, right? So we see this a lot with people, for example, in terms of shoulders, where they might have a really tight dysfunctional rotator cuff, which might be causing that shoulder to jam up, might be causing a bursitis, but ultimately might be leading to some degeneration into that shoulder joint if it's there for long enough. Similarly, hips, knees, many of these joints, if your muscles and ligaments aren't suitably mobile and flexible, then it may be that extra pressure is putting undue pressure or uneven pressure onto your joints and may lead to a risk of arthritis later on. All right. So once again, whether you're looking to prevent or you're looking to relieve arthritis, this can be beneficial in both cases by getting some of that stress off of those joints and potentially allowing some of that inflammation to ease, right? And so we know that movement, whether that be exercise or stretching, is an efficient way to start getting that inflammation moving, to assist your body, to assist your lymphatic system, starting to retrieve some of that inflammation and get it back moving through your body again, rather than stagnating where you don't want it to be and where it's causing you problems with your body and with your joints. So movement is really important. You want to minimize repetitive stress and strain as much as possible, right? So a lot of arthritis can be related to jobs or activities that are causing recurrent stress and strain on the body. And so, one of the ways to minimize that is to break it up, right? Try not to do the same thing more than 20 minutes, because if you have that same load under those ligaments and under those joints for more than 20 minutes, then that can really start to cause a problem. And so you want to try and break it up as much as possible, right? Just, move, do something different, move the joints, get them moving, get the pressure off of those ligaments, get the pressure off of those joints. And then even if you're going back to the same activity, at least you've created a bit of a different stimulus there, broken up that load on those ligaments and load on those joints, which is what causes them to deform over time. And so, as much as possible, try and break it up and try not to do the same thing in the same way. So this is where, for example, in offices, people who have standing desks and spend, some part of the day sitting, then some part of the day standing, and they might alternate between the two, and then they might sit on a football for a little while. And, that sort of variety of movement for our bodies is really beneficial in terms of reducing the risk of arthritis, of wear and tear and degeneration later on, okay? So I can see a few more people coming on as we go along. So welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining us on this workshop. Please feel free to add in comments along the way if you've got any questions about any of the stuff that I'm talking about. And if there's anything that isn't clear or anything additional you'd like me to cover, then make sure you let me know as well. Okay. Posture is one that I talk about a lot. Obviously, once again, as a chiropractor, making sure you are maintaining a healthy posture, not just when you're standing still, but also as you're doing various activities. So, you guys can't see me here, but my desk is set up so that my laptop is actually up on a stand, so that as I'm looking towards the laptop, I'm looking straight ahead. I'm not having to look down to my laptop. And my elbows, where here at the keyboard height or the mouse height, are level. My hands are level with my elbows, right? So I'm able to maintain a nice, straight, upright posture as I'm sitting and doing this, right? So whatever your work is, whatever your activity is, the more you can keep yourself in a neutral spine with your shoulders relaxed and your elbows down, then the less stress you are going to put onto your body, right? We know that we all sit too much. They say that your average office worker sits about 16 hours a day if you include, time in the office, time in the car, time in the TV, all that sort of stuff. So it's an enormous amount, right? Incidentally, that was 16 hours. That leaves 8 hours in the day. Most of those are spent sleeping. It doesn't leave a lot of time for movement, which, as we said, is really important for your joints. Okay, and so making sure you maintain your posture whilst you do all of your various different activities is going to help decrease the load on your spine. Like I said, we're not designed to sit for that length of time, so there's no matter how well you do it, it's probably going to be stressful on your spine. It's likely to increase your risk of getting arthritis later on. However, the better you do it, then the more you stack the odds in your favor, as I keep saying. So posture is really important. As you're standing, or even as you're sitting, you want to be able to look at yourself from side on, look at the middle of your ear, look at the point of your shoulder, look at the point of your hip, and even if you're sitting, those should be directly one above the other, right? That should not make a nice straight line. If you're standing up, that should then continue all the way down to your heels, and that should make a nice straight line, all right? If you want to get your posture checked, you can come in and see us at Healthy Choices Chiropractic if you're here in South Australia. If you're not, and you want me to help you find a great chiropractor close to home to check your posture for you, then let me know. But that's something we can easily check. I mean, here at our office, we have a computer program that can check that for you, show you exactly what's going on with your posture and whether that might be a problem for you. And that's a really worthwhile thing to do, as much as anything, because it helps make you conscious of it, aware of what's going on, and then it can lead into us giving you some other recommendations around what you can do to help improve that, which may include some chiropractic care, but may also include some homework that you can do too. All right, so that's posture. And that posture also comes into exercise technique, okay? And so really maintaining that same sort of alignment and posture whilst you're doing your exercises, whether that be squats, whether that be deadlifts, whether that be push-ups, whether that be playing sport, whether that be gardening, whether that be knitting, whatever it is that you're doing, picking up your kids, playing with your kids, as much as you can maintain a good posture and a good technique whilst you do those things, then that's also going to really help prevention-wise in terms of your risk of arthritis later on. The more aligned you can keep your joints, then the better that load is going to be distributed across those joints, left to right hip, left to right shoulder, left to right knee, but also within those individual joints, keeping them aligned, squatting with your knees out so that you're evenly distributing that load across your knee and across your foot and your ankle as well, is going to decrease the risk of that developing into arthritis later on. Okay, so maintaining your ease. The other one is avoiding ego exercises. So as we said before, doing too little can be a problem when it comes to movement. Doing too much can be a problem when it comes to movement, right? And so many of you will know, I like to do exercise, and I do CrossFit, and that has a bad rap in terms of the ego exercises and sometimes trying to do too much, too fast, too heavy. And so you need to be mindful of that, and I am mindful of that constantly, trying to make sure that whilst I do want to push myself a little bit, I do want to lift heavier, go faster, do all those sort of things, but reminding myself to do it in a way that is not harming my body, that is not going to detrimentally affect me later on. You got to think about what your purpose is in all of this. For me, my purpose is to keep being physically active for my own sake, but also for my kids, for decades to come. I want to be in my 70s and 80s still working out in my gym. I want to be in my 70s and 80s still, playing sport with the grandkids, maybe the great grandkids by then. I want to be in my 70s and 80s still able to go out and sail on our boat that we're slowly getting closer to finishing building. Let's get some water here. And so for me, it's about making sure I'm looking after my body and keeping it healthy now, but also keeping that ego in check so that I can make sure I'm keeping it healthy well into the future as well, okay? And so those are, I guess, really the physical aspects, at least most of the physical aspects of what we're talking about. The other one being, I guess, chiropractic care. You're probably not surprised that I'm a big fan of chiropractic care, and that I think keeping your joints really well aligned, keeping the interference away from your nervous system so that you can really adequately control the stabilizing muscles in your body is really beneficial in terms of helping to prevent joint injuries, is really beneficial in terms of, evenly distributing that joint weight and pressure, which is going to give your joints the best chance of aging healthily as you go on through your life, right? So I think that's really important, keeping your spine and your structure aligned well, keeping that interference away from your nervous system, allowing your body to de-stress, because we know that when your joints are moving well, you send messages back to your brain to help release, proprioceptive messages, help release dopamine and serotonin, which helps de-stress your whole system, which may well help decrease the inflammation in your whole system, right? So that is an additional way that can potentially help with the arthritis as well, all right? So I think getting some chiropractic care, or at the very least getting a checkup from a chiropractor to see if there's anything going on there that may be able to be helped and may be beneficial in terms of your arthritis is a really, really good idea. And once again, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that. Reducing stress, right? So in that same way that we just mentioned the stress response in your body and the link to the inflammatory response in your body, then being mindful of the stress in your lifestyle is a really important factor to consider with regards to arthritis. Right? Because if you are stressed, if you are, whether it's to do with your work, your home life, your family life, whatever it may be, that stress is going to increase that stress response in your body, that adrenaline and cortisol response in your body, which is then going to increase the risk of inflammation in your body. And as we said, arthritis ultimately is an inflammatory condition. So anything you can do that's going to help your body mitigate your stress response and mitigate your inflammatory response is going to be a good idea. So start thinking about what that is for you, and that's going to be different for everybody, right? But making sure you're getting adequate rest, right? Making sure you're getting adequate downtime, making sure you're getting adequate me time, in terms of whatever that looks like for you. That might be yoga, Pilates, it might be meditation, it might be fishing, it might be golf, it might be whatever it is for you. Bearing in mind that some of those repetitive one-sided activities like golf or cricket, which I love, can be a little bit detrimental in terms of arthritis as well because of the repetitive nature and the one-sided nature of those activities. But nevertheless, if they're helping you de-stress mentally, then they may also be beneficial at the same time, okay? So making sure you're de-stressing, making sure you're getting enough sleep. Once again, sleep is really important in terms of that inflammatory response and that stress response within your body. And so you want to make sure you're getting good quality sleep. You want to make sure you're tuning down at night so you can slow down that cortisol response in the evening, allow your body to fully reset so that you start from a low base and gradually increase your cortisol in the morning, and then obviously have it taper down again at the end of the day. And that's allowing that normal flow of that cortisol within your body. And that's a really important thing in terms of managing the stress response and managing the inflammatory response. Okay, so make sure you are getting enough sleep because that's really important too. And obviously sleep is when your body does all of its healing as well. And so if you want your body to be reducing the inflammation and helping heal those joints as much as is possible, understanding that sometimes some of the damage done can't be undone. We're not saying that you're going to just sleep your way to healthy joints, right? Sometimes some of what's done can't be undone. However, it's important to remember that there are things that can help, even if it's not going to get rid of the arthritis 100%. It can help relieve the arthritis and can help slow the arthritis. And that's what we're talking about here. So sleep is an important part of that. For many people, heat or cold can be beneficial, or both, in fact, can be beneficial in terms of mitigating the symptoms of their arthritis. So some people will find heat will help, particularly if it is a hot, inflamed joint, maybe a more recently aggravated joint that is sort of more actively and acutely inflamed. Sorry, I'm saying that the wrong way around. Ice is more likely to help if it's actively and acutely inflamed. If it's more chronic, as is the case with most people in their arthritis, then they may find that heat is more beneficial in terms of getting that sort of chronic joint moving again, freeing things up a little bit, allowing a bit more free movement, which can help to ease their arthritis as well. And some people will find that alternating between heat and cold can be really beneficial. All right. So as a general rule, if it's hot and inflamed, ice will tend to help. If it's more cold and chronic, then heat will tend to help. And try both, and try each of those and see which one works for your joints as well, because it can be a bit of a weird and wonderful thing sometimes. Everybody's body responds a little bit differently, so there's no sort of cold, hard and fast rule on that, okay? If you're a smoker, then really consider minimizing or quitting smoking, because we know that is really bad for your joints. It really does dehydrate the joints, and so is definitely a risk factor for arthritis, and also an aggravator of arthritis, okay? So it's one that people often don't put two and two together in terms of smoking and arthritis, but it is definitely one that can make a difference. Not necessarily immediately, but certainly over the medium to long term. Then quitting smoking, your joints are going to love you for it, okay? In the same way, minimizing alcohol intake, all right, because that can increase the stress response in your body. It can increase the acidity of your body. It can dehydrate your joints for a number of reasons. Alcohol, particularly excessive alcohol, can be really detrimental for the health of your joints. So consider limiting or reducing or quitting alcohol for the sake of your joints. That would be really beneficial. Okay. Blood sugar is another one that, once again, obviously really closely linked to the inflammatory response in your body. So obviously if that leads to diabetes, then that's been really closely linked with arthritis. But even just, pre-diabetes, or even just excessive, raised elevated sugar levels within your body can be linked with that inflammatory response, and can be really, aggravating for your joints, and can lead to not only increased likelihood of arthritis, but increased symptoms of arthritis as a result of increased inflammation that results. So be mindful of your blood sugar. And then there's a whole bunch of things that are really, I guess, anti-inflammatory that can be really beneficial in terms of including into your diet. Okay, so things like omega-3s. We know omega-3s, obviously, fish get the biggest benefit here in terms of getting omega-3s into you. One of the best ways to do that, to get those really nice healthy omega-3 ratios, the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. Fish are great for that because fish eat essentially lots of leafy greens, right? They don't eat any grains. And so in the same way, if our animals, with our livestock, are grass-fed, then they're likely to have a much healthier omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. If our chickens are out foraging and getting outside, then they're much more likely to have an healthier omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. And so the more we can encourage that, there's obviously also a lot of other alternatives now. If you're a vegan, then there are some really good sort of seaweed-based, kelp-based alternatives you can get to get your omega-3s in as well. But they're obviously really healthful for your joints and really anti-inflammatory for your body. So there's certainly one to be considering adding into your diet. Turmeric is another one that really is being utilized by a lot of people very successfully, showing some good benefits in the research in terms of anti-inflammatory response in your body. And people obviously are using turmeric in all sorts of ways now, whether that's in turmeric coffee, in their tea, in their food, in their cooking, taking supplements, all of those sort of things. There's many different ways you can add turmeric into your diet, and once again, that is seemingly beneficial. There are also others where people are creating all sorts of pastes and potions and all sorts of things with turmeric to help and getting benefits there as well. So you can sort of go right down a rabbit hole with turmeric in terms of how you want to apply it. But I think keeping it simple and putting some in your tea or your coffee, putting some in your food, and using it as the great herb that it is, would be a really smart thing to do if you are suffering from arthritis. There's another one that seems to be becoming really popular, is a chili pepper lotion. Now I haven't seen these, but I understand these are readily available. You can buy these in stores and online, which are rub-on lotions based on, or made from chili peppers. There also are seemingly a whole bunch of sort of homemade recipes that you can make based on chili peppers that can actually help ease the arthritis. And once again, this was shown to have some real benefit in the research. A number of medical, online reference places that I went to did actually mention this one as being beneficial, where maybe some of the others they may not have been as convinced by. The chili pepper lotion seems to be getting good reviews and good results with people. So that's a topical one you can apply if you are suffering from arthritis that may also help. So once again, there's so many different areas here that are worth having a think about. Fermented foods are beneficial for people, or can be beneficial for people with arthritis, purely because they're going to help with your gut health, which is then going to help decrease the inflammation in your body. All right. So once again, this is one where people will sort of think, well, that seems like a bit of a long bow. However, the results, certainly the anecdotal results, but also some of the results within the medical community and the research seem to be indicating that fermented foods can be really beneficial for you in terms of mitigating the effects of arthritis. So whether that's easing your arthritis or slowing your arthritis, or maybe even preventing arthritis, looking after your gut health seems to be a really important and a really sensible thing to do. And obviously, looking after your gut health is about more than just fermented foods. It's about looking at your diet. It's about looking at your usage of medications and a whole range of other things that can have an influence on your gut health as well. But fermented foods certainly do seem to have some real benefits there as well. Okay. Another one that's sort of been around for quite a while, and once again has some good research around it, is the benefit of glucosamine or chondroitin, which are some supplements that you can have, which can be really beneficial to your joints and to your bones. In fact, I'm writing myself notes here because, and so I just realised there's one important one that I didn't have there. Anyway, so yes, glucosamine and chondroitin are really important, or can be really important. Some people get really good benefit from those in terms of, particularly from a supplement form, seemingly, in terms of helping to particularly manage the symptoms of their arthritis. But I think there's good reason to believe that if you're looking to slow or prevent arthritis, then they may well be beneficial there as well in terms of helping to look after your joints and lubricate your joints and keep them healthy. Okay. Obviously, on the subject of good healthy joints and good healthy ligaments, then bone broth is one that's come onto the scene a lot within the last decade, and has been shown to be a really beneficial way to provide your joints with all of the nutrients that they need, and that makes a lot of sense. You're essentially putting bones and joints into a pot and boiling them up to extract the nutrients, and all of those nutrients that come from those bones and joints and collagen and connective tissues are all the nutrients that your body needs in order to look after your bones and joints and connective tissues. All right, so bone broth is certainly a really good way to get some of those great nutrients in. It's really simple to do. It can be very, very cheap to do. It makes the house smell lovely. At least I think it does. I know some people don't like the house stinking of bone broth, but I love the smell. I love coming in and smelling of bone broth. So I actually haven't done one for a little while. I'm probably due to get one of those on the go, but I don't know. It does feel much more of a winter thing than a summer thing to me. But I think it's, if you're suffering with your joints, it's good to do any time of year. So bone broth is certainly something that can be really beneficial for your joints, really beneficial for your gut health as well, as we mentioned earlier. So that is actually something that can really be quite anti-inflammatory for your body as well, in terms of healing your gut lining. And so it could have a real double whammy there in terms of the benefits it could have for your joints too. All right, so I've got a question here from Barb. I'm just checking out here. I have high oxalates. I wonder if this affects my joints. Thing is, a lot of high oxalate foods like turmeric and nuts are foods you aren't supposed to have when trying to lower oxalates. Well, that would make sense. Not having high oxalate foods when you're trying to lower oxalates, I'm guessing would make sense as well. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's going to be so many different... there's so many different, everybody's different, right? And so what works for one is not necessarily going to work for others. And so if you are finding that those oxalates are causing a problem for you, then yeah, by all means, minimizing the oxalates and seeing how that goes for you. But I think if you're doing everything else, it's a bit like we spoke about before with the meats in terms of the gout. Whilst meats do contain uric acid, if you are eating a healthy diet with healthy meats high in omega-3s, they can be a really important part of a really anti-inflammatory diet, right? So it's like the evidence seems to be suggesting that, if you look at people eating lots of meat and they're eating lots of kind of junk meat, hamburgers and hot dogs and those kind of things, then that might be really detrimental for them. However, if you're looking at someone who's eating perhaps more like a paleo diet, eating some really healthy meats with grass-fed, high in omega-3s, combined with lots of whole, real food. They're balancing it out with lots of great fruits and vegetables and all those sort of things. Then that can actually be really anti-inflammatory and may, in fact, lower your risk of getting gout. And I suspect it may be a little bit the same in terms of the oxalates. That if you're doing everything else right and your body's detoxing well and removing those oxalates well, then it may well be that that balances out that effect, and so that you get the benefit of those foods without necessarily getting the downside. So yeah, there's certainly I think the the benefits of those foods in some instances may outweigh the risk, but that's probably just one for you to trial and error for your own personal life. I think is to see whether try it, try it out for a month and cut them down and focus on other aspects that I've given you here. As I said, there are some 23 different aspects you can focus on here. So try cutting those out for a month and focusing on those other aspects and see how you go. And then try adding in turmeric or nuts or whatever it may be. I mean nuts is probably one that I wouldn't necessarily focus on, but certainly the turmeric, I would think it likely that the anti-inflammatory effect of that might outweigh the negatives. So yeah, try it both ways and see how it goes. Once again, this is all of this advice is really general advice. I'm not your individual practitioner, but also even if I was, I'd be saying to you, look, try it and see what works for you, because there are so many different types of arthritis. Everybody's arthritis is different. Everybody responds in different ways. Everybody may benefit from different things. And as I said, you may find, for example, that oxalates don't work for you right now, and that they are causing a problem for you right now. But then you may find later on, as you work on other things and you clean up your gut health and you reduce the overall inflammation in your body, that you may be able to reintroduce some of those oxalate-rich foods, and they may then not cause you a problem and may actually be beneficial for you as well. So I know that's a bit of a wishy-washy, fence-sitting answer, but that is my best answer, is that you kind of have to do a bit of a trial and error and see what works for you, Barb, I think. I hope that answered it for you. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. As I said, I know it was a bit wishy-washy and a bit fence-sitting, but that's the best answer I can give. Things like going gluten-free can certainly be beneficial for some people in terms of reducing the inflammation in the body and reducing the stress in their joints. I certainly have had a number of practice members, I'm thinking of one in particular, who went gluten-free and noticed a massive change to the health of her joints and the pain she was getting from the arthritis that she had, right? It didn't remove the arthritis, right? Like if, within a space of months, she noticed, probably within a space of weeks, she noticed a massive change from removing gluten from her diet. But if I'd taken an x-ray before and an x-ray after removing the gluten from the diet, they would have looked exactly the same, right? The arthritis would have still been there. The wear and tear, the degeneration would have still been there. Probably less of the inflammation, which you don't necessarily see on the x-rays, right? But they would have, to all intents and purposes, looked the same. It hadn't repaired all of the damage, but it had reduced the inflammation and allowed her body to just function that much better and be that much freer of pain. So if you haven't tried gluten-free, then certainly try it. If you've tried gluten-free and it didn't work, you may even want to go a step further and try grain-free or grain and pseudo-grain-free and see how that works for you as well. But that's certainly one that's worth trying. Magnesium is really important for the health of your bones. It's really important for the health of your muscles. And many people find that taking magnesium, releasing those muscles, allowing those muscles to relax, can take a lot of that pressure off of their arthritic joints, which obviously can help alleviate the symptoms, but may also help take some of the pressure off and help reduce the rate of degeneration that's happening and prevent and ease arthritis as well, or slow the progression of arthritis as well. Right? So magnesium is definitely one to consider. Similarly, vitamin D, once again, really important for your joints, really important for your muscles, really important for your body as a whole in terms of de-stressing and reducing inflammation and reducing that systemic response in your body. So making sure you're getting enough sunshine, 20 minutes of good quality sunshine on as much surface area of your skin as possible is really the most important thing for vitamin D, as well as making sure you're getting some good healthy fats in your diet, which are the precursors for the production of vitamin D. Obviously, you can have your vitamin D in foods. However, the best source of vitamin D is making sure you're getting adequate sunlight. Your body produces a lot more vitamin D than it absorbs. So that's really important. Other supplements that have been shown to work for some people, things like ginger, thyme, green tea or green tea extracts, cinnamon, ginger, pepper, willow bark, which is a sort of classic traditional recipe. That is where some of the pain-killing medications, I think it's paracetamol, isn't it, came from willow bark. I'm pretty sure that's right. I think you'll let me know if I got that wrong. And so, that can be beneficial as well for easing the symptoms of arthritis. Obviously, bearing in mind that can have impacts with medications you're taking and things like that as well. So, before you're taking any of these sort of things, make sure you're consulting with your healthcare provider. Make sure you're doing it in a safe way, especially if you are taking medications. Just be careful of that. And then the final one that's become really popular in recent times is CBD, is cannabis-based products. Now, to be honest, I don't even know the legalities of those in Australia. And so I think that is different in different places in Australia and definitely around the world. It seems that some of those restrictions on those products are gradually easing around the world, and then they are becoming available for people to try. And certainly I've spoken to a number of people who've gotten seemingly excellent results in terms of managing symptoms of arthritis, taking those kind of products. I sort of, have the caveat that it is still, it's a drug, right? And so you need to treat it like any other drug. Once again, if in fact it is legal in your area, you need to treat it like any other drug. Understand that it does have side effects. Understand that it does have, consequences as well. And so, my thinking around it is kind of like it is with most drugs, is that if I can do it with natural things, with food and anti-inflammatory and diet and exercise and mindset, then I'd rather do it that way, okay? And then, if it gets to the stage where I've done all of those things to the best of my ability, and I'm still having pain and symptoms that are more than I'm able to bear, that are more than I'm able to manage in that way, then then there is a time and a place to consider these sort of pharmaceutical interventions to try and help get by, to help you get on with life and to live and to achieve all of the other things you'd like to achieve in your life. And so if you are at that stage, then you really want to consider what are the side effects and which drugs or medications can I take that are perhaps maybe slightly more natural, maybe slightly less side effects, maybe more beneficial, right? And so that's a consideration that you need to make. That's you need to weigh up those pros and cons and decide whether that's right for you. Once again, certainly that's not a decision or a recommendation from me or a decision for me to make. You need to assess whether, like I said, whether that's legal in your neck of the woods, and whether those whether you need to go down that route or whether you can manage it in other ways that do have less side effects and less sort of pharmaceutical impacts on your body, and then which way you want to do that and to what extent you're willing to go down that medical route. So that's a really individual decision, whether it's CBD, whether it's painkillers, whether it's anti-inflammatories, all of those sort of things. That's something really to talk to your doctor about, and to talk to someone who is able to prescribe and recommend and let you know the rules around those sort of things as well. But certainly I recognise that is an option that is out there. It is one that I do know a number of people who've chosen to go down, and seemingly have gotten great benefits from doing it that way as well. So that's my thinking on arthritis. I actually got through that a lot quicker than I expected, but there's a lot to unpack in that. And so I suspect that some of you may have questions. If you've got questions now, then by all means let me know. If you've got questions later, as I said, if you're watching this and a recording, the best spot to go and ask those questions is in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. Wherever you're watching this video, there should be a link to that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. You can just ask to join there, answer the questions, and I'll let you in. It's also a great place to be if you want to catch all of my future mentoring, whether that be videos like this, whether that be my podcasts, whether that be just other health and wellness events or information that I want to share. We will have some exciting health and wellness events coming up next year as we start getting back out in the world, including things like some of our events to do with our podcast. There may be some stuff coming there, including events for the practice, right? So we'll be having, for example, a practice open day sometime in early in the year. My next one of these workshops is going to be all about creating healthy habits and showing you my new habit tracker that I'm creating to help you make healthy lifestyle changes. It'll be perfect for a new year to get everyone off to a kickstart into next year. So Once again, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that, the best spot to be is in that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, and you'll get all the information about it in there. So it doesn't look like you guys have got any more questions for me tonight. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Once again, if you do think of questions after, or you're listening to the recording, head to the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, answer the questions, ask for access, and I'll get you in there so you can answer, or you can ask all the questions to your heart's content, and I will answer all of them personally. I get in there very regularly. Glenda says, thank you. I got a lot out of your workshop. That's fantastic. That's great to hear. That's why I do it, Glenda, is I love helping people. And so I'm glad you got something out of it. I look forward to hearing inside the group what you have done from tonight and how that's worked for you, because I love hearing the success stories as well. So if you have got any success stories from making changes as a result of one of these workshops, then I love to hear those. They really light my fire. That's why I do what I do. And so anyway, have a great night. Best of luck with your arthritis if that's what you're suffering. Make sure you pass this on to anyone you know who is suffering from arthritis, because there's lots of great content in here that can help them. And I'll speak to you guys inside the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group soon, and stay tuned for my next webinar coming up early in the new year. Thanks guys, catch ya.